good morning, everybody. How lovely to see you all. And we are going to explore this phrase, all we can be, and as Mrs. Smith has said, we're going to talk about the contribution of our understanding of this phrase by four giants of philosophy from the 20th century. On the 22nd of March, 3 years ago, 2020, many of you in the room, most of you in the room here, attended final assemblies as we entered that rather shocking phase that we're all talking about still of lockdown. It was a generational experience. None of us had been through this before. And I'd been in charge of communications with the parents up to that point, and I wrote my final post to parents on the day that you were here attending assemblies, taking your books home and your learning resources home to begin remote education for we didn't know how many weeks, and it turned into months, of course. And as I typed that letter that got sent that day, I used a phrase at the end. I used the phrase that you had been the best versions of yourselves. And I meant that, and I started crying as I wrote it. It was a culmination of quite a lot of stress and pressure, and it was, of course, a massive event for the school and for our whole community, the community of the world. And I meant in that phrase not that you had been the best in your classroom that day, the best at applying to university, the best at some co-curricular activity. I meant that you had been the best person that you could be. And that reminded me of a group of philosophers who met in the Second World War, another time of great extreme world crisis, who came to develop a voice and contribute to our understanding of right and wrong in a way that I still believe was the most significant contribution in philosophy for the last few hundred years. They met at the University City of Oxford, and it was the Second World War, and one of them was the granddaughter of a former American president. She went in 1945, in April, to a film showing at an Oxford cinema. And in those days, prior to the feature film, you would hear or read and see newsreel. You'd get news from around the world. And of course, at that time, it was still the Second World War. I like to think that the feature film that she was going to see that day might well have been Brief Encounter, which starred a certain Trevor Howard, who was a pupil at this school. But the newsreel showed something very shocking. It was the liberation of the camp, Bergen-Belsen. And Philippa Foot had been brought into the philosophical world of Oxford that had been under the influence of this particular thinker, Freddie Eyre, who was actually out working for MI6 during the war. And during the Second World War, there was a space for the women students of Oxford to speak, to learn, and to publish in a way that they hadn't had before, because many of the men were away on the war effort. Freddie Eyre had taken a view that morality was not a real feature of the world because it couldn't be shown to be true scientifically, because it wasn't true by definition. But Philippa Foot looked at Bergen-Belsen and felt this was inadequate, this was wrong. We needed a new language to speak of morality in the face of what we saw at the end of the Second World War. And she worked with three remarkable women. Iris Murdoch, a brilliant novelist of the 20th century. Mary Midgley, who lived the longest of the four of them and became the professor of philosophy at Newcastle University. And Elizabeth Anscombe, the daughter of school teachers who lived in Forest Hill and went to a school a couple of miles from here. They revived interest in one of the great philosophers of all time. The person you can see on the screen in blue is Aristotle, and he's in dispute with his teacher, Plato. You'll see that Plato is pointing to the skies, whereas Aristotle is pointing to the world. And this summarized the different view that they took of the word virtue. They both believed that the moral life lay in virtues. But for Plato, the virtues stemmed from something non-material, something almost divine, if you like, something conceptual, residing above the mucky world of human life. But Aristotle disagreed. Aristotle said it was from the world that you gained your understanding of virtue. If you like, his use of the word was virtuosi. You were to be a virtuoso as a human being, like you would be as a violinist. And these women encouraged us to upskill ourselves, to learn from experience, to see the influence of people around us and how we might contribute to others. And they gave us a view of the moral life, which was not about what rules do I keep, what laws do I respect, but what kind of a person am I? Very much they encouraged us to be all we can be. Thank you.